Greetings, history enthusiasts. Welcome to another episode on Timeless Capsule, your go-to channel for intriguing historical content. Today we're diving deep into the annals of time, unearthing stories from some of the worst years in human history. Your support through subscribing to our channel helps us continue this important work, bringing the past alive in the present. So buckle up as we embark on this journey back in time to the years 1347, 1918, and 1945. Our first stop is the year 1347, a year marked by the onset of the Black Death pandemic. The Black Death, also known as the bubonic plague, was a lethal disease that took Europe by storm in the 14th century. Its origins can be traced back to the dry plains of Central Asia, from where it traveled along Silk Road trade routes, eventually making its way to Europe on Genoese trading ships. Once the plague arrived in Europe, it spread like wildfire. The bacterium, Yersinia pestis, was transferred to humans through the bite of an infected flea, which had previously fed on an infected rodent. The symptoms were gruesome and swift: fever, chills, weakness, and swollen lymph nodes, or buboes, hence the name bubonic plague. Often death followed within days. The impact of the Black Death was catastrophic. It's estimated that between 30 and 60% of Europe's population was wiped out. That's between 25 and 50 million people. Entire towns and villages were abandoned, economies collapsed, and the social fabric was forever changed. The sheer magnitude of death and disruption led to a wave of religious, social, and economic upheavals. The devastation of the Black Death also had a profound effect on art and literature. As death became an all-too-familiar sight, it began to feature more prominently in cultural expressions. This shift can be seen in the emergence of dance macabre or dance of death motifs in art, reflecting society's increased preoccupation with mortality. The Black Death was not just a medical catastrophe, but a societal and cultural earthquake. Its effects reverberated through the centuries, shaping the course of history in ways that are still felt today. The pandemic served as a stark reminder of humanity's vulnerability in the face of nature's wrath, and the resilience required to survive and rebuild in its aftermath. And so, 1347 was a year of darkness and despair, as the Black Death swept across continents, leaving a trail of devastation. Fast forward to 1918, a year marked by the intense final year of World War I. As the year began, the world was in the throes of a conflict that had reshaped the face of the earth, with nations locked in a deadly struggle for power and survival. In the bitter chill of winter, the Western Front was a quagmire of mud and trenches, where the armies of the Allies and Central Powers faced off in a deadly stalemate. The Battle of the Somme had ended the previous year, leaving over 1 million men dead or wounded, and the scars of this horrific battle were still fresh in the minds of the soldiers and civilians alike. The year 1918 saw some of the most intense fighting of the war. From the spring offensive launched by the Germans in March, hoping to break the deadlock before American forces could fully deploy, to the 100 Days offensive led by the Allies in August, which finally broke the German lines and began the push towards victory. These battles were a testament to the sheer scale and brutality of the conflict. But the war wasn't just fought on the battlefields. At home, populations were ravaged by food shortages, the Spanish flu pandemic, and the constant fear of loss. The war had a profound impact on societies around the world, leading to significant political changes, including the collapse of empires and the rise of new ideologies. Finally, on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, the guns fell silent. The armistice was signed, marking the end of World War I. But the peace that followed was a troubled one, with the Treaty of Versailles sowing the seeds for future conflicts. Thus, 1918 was a year of intense conflict, leaving an indelible mark on world history. It was a year that saw the end of a war that had touched every corner of the globe, a year of significant casualties, and a year that would forever change the political and social landscape of the world. Our final stop is 1945, the concluding year of World War II, marked by some of the deadliest battles in history. This year would see the end of a conflict that had engulfed the world, causing unimaginable devastation and loss of life. The year began amidst an atmosphere of desperation and determination. The Allies, composed of the United States, the United Kingdom, the Soviet Union, and other nations, were pushing back against the Axis powers, primarily Germany and Japan. The battles were fierce, the stakes were high, and the human cost was enormous. In Europe, The Battle of the Bulge raged on. This was Adolf Hitler's last major offensive, a desperate attempt to turn the tide of war in his favor. But despite initial successes, the German forces were ultimately pushed back by the Allies. Meanwhile, in the Pacific, the island-hopping campaign was in full swing, as the United States sought to establish airfields close enough to launch attacks on Japan's home islands. This led to some of the fiercest fighting of the war, including the Battle of Iwo Jima and the Battle of Okinawa. But perhaps the most significant events of 1945 were those that finally ended the war. In May, Germany unconditionally surrendered, marking the end of the war in Europe. Then, in August, after the devastating atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan also surrendered, bringing World War II to a close. The aftermath of the war was a world forever changed. Nations were left in ruins, millions were dead, and the geopolitical landscape had been dramatically reshaped. Yet, out of the ashes, new alliances and institutions were born. The United Nations was established, in hopes of preventing such a catastrophic war from ever happening again. So, 1945 was a year that witnessed the end of a devastating war, forever etching its memory in the annals of history. So, there we have it. 3 years that have left an indelible mark on human history. We've journeyed through the onset of the Black Death pandemic in 1347, the chilling climax of World War I in 1918, and the brutal end of World War II in 1945. Each of these years has shaped our world and our understanding of it in profound ways. Thank you for joining us on this historical journey on Timeless Capsule. Don't forget to subscribe for more intriguing historical content. Until next time, keep exploring history.